being of light. Be a man, a woman, a child of light, a bearer of light, a kindler and keeper of light, that beacons in all directions, sweeps over dark seas, stony shores, the faces of vessels, of sailors, of known and unknown voyagers. Welcome to the latest floating poetry broadcast, and thank you for leaning in to show 193, coming to you live from the lighthouse-dotted coast of Rhode Island. This is your poet, illuminator, and guiding spirit in the poetosphere, Colin Goedecke, a voice here and elsewhere for living our days more fully, more alively, more poetically. Last week's broadcast, in case you were not listening, was making sense of your world, deciphering, interpreting, discerning, and understanding it, especially the more confusing or confounding, mystifying, or bewildering parts of it. And reflections on figuring things out, often things meaningful to our peace of mind, to our ability to navigate our daily lives, affecting our sense of the future, our feelings of possibility. This week, be a lighthouse, looking at the light we have within us to shine, our own radiance of heart, of mind, of spirit, of eyes and face, and the beacon others are, or have been for us. Contemplating the guiding light to safe harbor we seek at points as we navigate our lives. Beholding nature's faithful luminosity, sun to moon. Appreciating places and cultures in the world that offer us a great gleam of ease or hope or clearness. Also the delight and dependability of lighthouses themselves, and the rich and relevant symbolism they offer and have held through time. So, I've created a good broadcast of cultural commentary, poetry, quotes, anecdotes, inquiry, and discovery around this theme. Let's make our way to the light. Make our way with each of our own lights, beaming and sweeping. This coming into this from my experiential show of theater on paper, Behind the Curtain. This is from the 2018 debut of it before it traveled. Radiance. The effulgence. The expansiveness of being. The larger-than-lifeness that comes when you let the light of all that is spill into you, pour from you. The great radiance, always there to open to. Margaret Hasse, Hasse, radiance. The Roman candle of a yard light caramelizes the old snow. The glow trespasses the dark hold of December, dimming the view of the night sky with its winter triangle. A boy strains to see through the haze as he lets his jacket hang open, unzipped to the cold. He knows to return through the black cleft between buildings, below electric wires that seem to carry a little train of snow on their slim rails, where he throws the switch that shuts off the bulb on its pole, that opens the dome to a blast of stars in outer space, to the pinpoint of Jupiter, to the constellation of Orion hunting the great bear that the boy follows to find a smudge of gray. He can gaze through that peephole to another galaxy, also spangled with radiance from stars that traveled 2.5 million light years before appearing as a signal in the rod cells of his eyes that pass impulses through neurons and nerves to his brain that creates images. He draws in a sharp breath, the high-voltage power box of his chest hot and humming. Thank you, Margaret Hasse. Romance from her collection, Earth's Appetite, new to me. Beautiful. The poet Charles Simic said, "Inside my empty bottle, I was constructing a lighthouse while all the others were making ships." The writer Maddox Ford. And it was a most remarkable, a most moving glance, as if for a moment a lighthouse had looked at me. Love that. James McMichael, The Inland Lighthouse. Into the night, out from him, out into the air, he throws his frames and fixes them, holds them out there. These are his shores. The waters never rush at him, never follow the beams back along the watch to his lean shiver. Around him, as he turns, he hears a dull tick of grains. He stares into the day. Sand fills the sky with its falling, and he turns and turns. Nowhere, nowhere. It is his oath. He is the light, the keeper. He is not to leave. Thank you, James McMichael, The Inland Lighthouse. One of mine, from January of 2016, 8 years back, from Nomad in New York City. That's north of Madison Park, if you don't know, where I spent some time. Earthman. Earthman, planetarian, worldling, human kindler, Homeric sapien, you, we, solar beings, seeking, drinking, reflecting light. From his beautiful, soulful book of blessings, to bless the space between us, the philosopher-poet John O'Donohue. I've spoken of him more than a few times for different reasons, different themes, and he certainly belongs here with us and for this. And here is what he had to say in that book. There is a quiet light that shines in every heart. It draws no attention to itself, though it is always secretly there. It is what illuminates our minds to see beauty, our desire to seek possibility, and our hearts to love life. Without this subtle quickening, our days would be empty and wearisome, and no horizon would ever awaken our longing. Our passion for life is quietly sustained from somewhere in us that is wedded to the energy and excitement of life. This shy inner light is what enables us to recognize and receive our very presence here as blessing. Thank you. Always, John O'Donohue. Such a wise soul. If you have never heard him speak, he has a most melodious Irish voice, Irish accent. Rebecca Elson, let there always be light, and in parens, searching for dark matter. For this we go out dark nights, searching for the dimmest stars, for signs of unseen things, to weigh us down, to stop the universe from rushing on and on into its own beyond, till it exhausts itself and lies down cold, its last star going out. Whatever they turn out to be, let there be swarms of them, enough for immortality, always a star where we can warm ourselves. Let there be enough to bring it back from its own edges, to bring us all so close we ignite the bright spark of resurrection. Thank you, Rebecca Elson. Well, I have one to pair with that from my library of poems, ever growing, expanding. because I'd like us to reflect further on and in the splendid light housed in elements of nature. Yes, the sun, yes, the moon, and yes, the stars and other places. This is a poem from March of 2017, Speaks the Star. Through time, space, histories, simply giving itself, sharing its light, its distant yet deeply present peace, quiet through each night, asking nothing in return, getting everything in a return of simple, eternal wonder. Speaks the star. And they do every night, like that, to me, maybe to you. Yes, nature is full of beaconings, but there's also the light-filled energies of animals. Of course, we humans really ultimately are, photonic. We're made of not just a lot of water, but light is a very key element inside of us, if you don't know that. Much has been written, studied, and understood now about that, and how we also drink it in through our eyes and skin. But yes, the light-filled energy of animals, and in history, like this group, the whales. This poem is from New York City, January 2014, 10 years back. Carriers of light. They swam inside the collars of stiff-shirted men, the skirts and corsets of well-contained ladies, the silk folds of tightly rolled umbrellas, were worn round bodies and held over heads through rain, sun, seasons, the bones of mighty to behold creatures, and all their sacred oil that flamed street lamps for carriages and coachmen, lit night lamps for readers, for lovers, fed ticking clocks on tall mantles, essential fuel, rare as the milk of queens, spilled wantonly, unwantedly, from the ancient rovers of the oceans, from unfathomably many innocent carriers of light, life, song. Blessing on the whales. Glad that is not, at least as much as I know, happening the way it did back in time. All those beautiful creatures being taken from us in the oceans. Well, how about a handful of questions now about being a lighthouse? How are you a lighthouse in your life? A light bearer? A vital light for others? How and how well do you tend your light? Are you a good light and lighthouse keeper? And if so, how did you learn to be that way? Who is or was a lighthouse, a great beacon for you? And in what ways? Where do you feel we most need a kind of lighthouse shining out in our world right now, for the world? And what would that look like? And what kind of light would it give? Would it beam? One of humanity? Of transparency? Or some other kind? What vivid feelings or associations arise when you think of lighthouses themselves? What's your earliest memory of seeing a lighthouse? Or being near one, or inside one, or up at the top of one? Where were you? How old were you? What impression did it make? What do lighthouses symbolize for you? Were you ever saved or guided by the actual light from one? And if so, what was that experience like? Who in your life may be in need of your light right now? Well, I'm starting to do this much more, and everybody seems quite happy about it out there in the listening world. And so I reached out to listeners and others last days with some of these questions, and would love to share some of what they sent back to me. Peggy Blobel in Germany wrote, "Good questions. Light is so symbolic, and to radiate like the light of a lighthouse is a serious obligation." Thank you, Peggy, and yes to that, especially to tend it, and maybe even more so, a gift that we each have to discover and offer, and an opportunity to embody it ever more so, and to use well. From another listener, from B. Upon leaving Connecticut so long ago, Gunilla Norris, when asked, quote, "How will I find my way?" answered, quote, "Put one foot in front of the other." In relation to the lighthouse beacon and its intermittent shaft of light upon one specific place in its rotation, might I use the intermittent glow to take one step within its lighted beam, and then pause, and then wait for the comfort of the next beam of light to proceed? A small yet significant practice to refine with confidence. So when I do meet those times of no light, I can trust my sure-footed attention and continue on until the next illumination. It's wonderful. Thank you, B. Thank you so much for that. And Gunilla Norris, you may not know of her. You might, but if you don't, here's something apropos about her, a poet and writer actually quite nearby where I live, and this is in her own words. "When I published Being Home in 1991, I did not know that I had begun a series of books on what I now call household spirituality, or the practice of spiritual awareness in the most mundane and simple of circumstances. Together, these books seem to me to be like a crystal with many facets. They are part of one thing and yet shed light from different perspectives on the humblest of our day-to-day tasks. It has always been my understanding that when we are really present in our daily activities, our lives become more luminous, filled with love and grace." Beautiful. Thank you, Gunilla Norris, for those words. Yes. And then there's Tony Avocado, artist, who was inspired to compose 2 poems for this very occasion, and here's one of them. "The lighthoused leverage of your matchless smile." The lighthoused leverage of your matchless smile recalls uncharted oceans in its span. Such sailing would endeavor to allow a safe return from far-flung voyaging, while all those lifetimes languishing between the way things are and surely should have been revive within your eyesight's hazel gaze, to raise those fabled kingdoms culled from sleep, then fallen back to clay, to rise again in maritime upon your blondish crown, while all the world's renown is in your grasp. Some happiness, at last, is finally known. Thank you, Tony. Yes, thank you for your gift of this and the other poem. Much appreciated. All right, well, on we go. There may be other questions, but there's a good handful for now. On we go, friends. From New York City, April 2013. Live in a place of light. Live in a place of light, a palace of light, a palazzo of light, a great palladium or simply a palapa, but always a place where it streams, floods, suns everywhere, through you, through everything. You know, I sometimes like to pop into Wikipedia, certain themes, and I looked up lighthouse, but not all the sort of typical things, construction and all of that, but on ancient lighthouses. I was in one in the Cyclades in Greece, in the Aegean, 2 summers, years back-to-back summers, and there was this marvelous a lighthouse there, quite ancient, and had a chapel attached to it, a Greek Orthodox chapel, and met the lighthouse keeper, and he gave me some beautiful gifts of some sea urchins. One was bright red, one was bright green, dried, empty. I have them. those treasures in a box to open up now and then. But here's Wikipedia. Ancient lighthouses. Before the development of clearly defined ports, mariners were guided by fires built on hilltops. Since elevating the fire would improve visibility, placing the fire on a platform became a practice that led to the development of the lighthouse. The intact Tower of Hercules at A Coruña, Spain, gives insight into ancient lighthouse construction. Other evidence about lighthouses exist in depictions on coins and mosaics, of which many represent the lighthouse at Ostia. So, yeah, you might be a lighthouse lover. I certainly am. And I was also thinking, of course, of Edward Hopper, who painted many of them, or certainly a good number of them. This is from Linus Fontrodona, LINUSFONTRODONA.com. Many views of a few lighthouses, Edward Hopper. Yes, who so, I would say, iconically and also very feelingly painted them. So here's a little snip from that. One of the favorite and most appreciated motives of Ed Hopper were lighthouses. He painted them with delight, insistence, and a deep empathy toward their look, their function, and their isolation, to the point that after her wife, Josephine, and Plain Houses, these buildings were his most depicted, quote, models, surely because he identified with them in several ways. She, Josephine Versteel Nivison, quote, Jo Hopper, who was a promising artist in her own right before she disappeared into Hopper's shadow, wrote that, quote, his lighthouses are self-portraits. It was not the kindest comparison, since she was referring not only to his tall and stiff figure, but also to his loneliness, closeness, and distant personality. Several times she said he had an impenetrable ego. Thus, Hopper's lighthouses are most representative among all of his artwork. Interesting. Had not read that before, but not surprised. I have a small lighthouse story of mine to tell you. So over in Watch Hill, nearby, there's a beautiful lighthouse I often visit on a point, an often windy point. It's also the place that the banner image for the show is from. That's the lighthouse, the Watch Hill Light. And a couple of years back, I had a friend who seriously wanted to buy that lighthouse for me. I thought it was a joke at first, but she was quite serious. And it had come. Well, the Coast Guard didn't want it anymore, so they put it up for sale. And when she said, I would like to buy you a lighthouse, I just laughed, said, oh, sure, thinking, where on earth, how would that ever happen? Just so I was having fun with it. But it turned out that was for sale. She found out that she said, I want to buy that. And I thought, well, okay, what a perfect place for a poet like me to live. You know, that one or all sorts of other ones up in Maine or abroad. I said, you could, of course, if you buy it, you could, of course, visit, and I'll leave the light on for you when you do. So, well, it didn't happen. It didn't come about, but, it was a lot of fun to dream about at the time. Yeah, so I wanted to tell you about that. Who knows what happens in the future? Maybe I wind up living for a while in a lighthouse. That'd be a good poet in residency to do. Yeah, I'd like that. I'm going to put that energy out. Yeah, so I could add my light to the light of the house. Well, I did speak, as you know, at the opening about symbolism, and I sourced a few things apropos. This is from symbolreader.com, Symbolism of the Lighthouse. The world's first lighthouse, the Pharos, was erected in the ancient city of Alexandria in Egypt. One of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, it turned the insignificant port of Pharos into one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. It was most probably built out of dazzlingly white limestone and around up to 600 feet tall. Not only was it a beacon for sea travelers, but it also served as a sort of welcome center or a shining portal for all newcomers into that magnificent city. The lighthouse may be seen as symbolic of individual consciousness, which kindles a, quote, a light in the darkness of mere being, as Carl Jung famously put it in his memoirs. And this is from cake.com. More on that. Symbolic meanings of lighthouses explained. I'm just going to sort of dance through this a little bit. I don't need to read it all to you, but I'll give you some of them. Strength. Lighthouses are built to withstand harsh conditions, perhaps some of the fiercest on the planet. Safety. A dry, safe place to be in the heart of a storm, and also serves the function of bringing boats and ships to a safe harbor. It's as a place of safety. There's a poem that Longfellow wrote, The Lighthouse, actually. I'll give you a little bit of that excerpt. And the great ships sail outward and return, bending and bowing o'er the billowy swells, and ever joyful as they see it burn, they wave their silent welcomes and farewells. They come forth from the darkness, and their sails gleam for a moment only in the blaze, and eager faces, as the light unveils, gaze at the tower and vanish while they gaze. The mariner remembers when a child, on his first voyage, he saw it fade and sink, and when, returning from adventures wild, he saw it rise again o'er the ocean's brink. Steadfast, serene, immovable, the same year after year, through all the silent night, burns on forevermore that quenchless flame, shines on that inextinguishable light. Thank you, Longfellow. Other symbols are hope. The first sight of a flashing light on the horizon tells you that all is not lost. Navigation, one's navigation through life. Perhaps you have an important person in your life who has acted as your lighthouse and has guided you through difficulties. I've certainly had more than a few of those. A guiding light. Steadfastness. The keeper is always there, always waiting. Vigilance. A lighthouse can symbolize a watchful overseer. And the end of a journey. For those going on voyages across the sea, the first sight of a beacon might symbolize the end of a long journey. And resilience, built to withstand any storm and without end. The shape of lighthouses, which are almost always cylindrical, similar to a wedding ring. A lighthouse may symbolize being without end. So there are some of them. Maybe they have other symbolism for you. If so, ponder that. Or let me know what else comes up for you, actually. Yes. Well, here's a 1962 poem by Weldon Keys, Land's End. A day all blue and white, and we came out of woods to sand and snow-capped waves. The sea rose with us as we walked, the land-built dunes, a lighthouse, and a sky of gulls. Here, where I built my life 10 years ago, the day breaks gray and cold, and brown surf muddying the shore deposits fish heads, sewage, rusted tin. Children and men break bottles on the stones. Beyond the lighthouse, black against the sky, 2 gulls are circling where the woods begin. Thank you, Weldon Keys. I had never read that. I haven't read a lot of his work, and so I want to find out what that was about, what the context of that, why that, telling us that story that way. I want to find out. As I hope many things spark your curiosity, as often poems spark mine and poets. The writer Annie Lamott said, lighthouses don't go running all over an island looking for boats to save. They just stand there shining. Benjamin Franklin said, lighthouses are more helpful than churches. About that? What say you, dear listeners, about that, about what Ben Franklin had to say? Well, we have actual lighthouses themselves, which, as you know, I said a moment ago, I always have loved, since childhood for sure, and have looked for always in my travels all over my decades on many coasts and continents. Always enjoy another one or a familiar one I'm revisiting, like up in Maine, for example. Well, here was watching the sunset on Rockport Harbor in Maine, on the mid-coast, October of 2017. It's called It's Time for Violet. Time to wash violet into the harbor waters, where the seals are silking below the cold, fading surface, and all the unsailed boats are pointing south at their moorings. Time to dial down the deep October sky. Take it from peacock to pastel blue. Dial up star points of pale green and yellow-white above the piers. Bring on the quick-winking lighthouse beacon. Slowly flow Davies gray and vine black onto the dusk descending canvas. Call it a mid-coast night. Catherine Soniat, S-O-N-I-A-T, also new poet and poem. Lighthouse telephone. You held your hands on my face when I was 4 and blistering with sun, that broken boat sputtering finally toward home. You made a breeze with them all afternoon, said they were like palm trees near my window miles ago in Key West. Key West had slipped so easily out of sight, the salt spray sun sinking down in orange, twilight coming upon us in a fishing boat that would not start. The only sound was waves slapping the boat side in the wind. Then a lighthouse came alive, like one match struck in the dark and blown out, then another. You tied a hatchet to your scarlet bathing suit in the starlight and swam away. The whole gulf swam up to me, floating alone. At last the sun rose pale from the water. I bobbed blocks or miles from you in that white bone of a lighthouse, dozing, waking, sleeping. All around the gulf was birdless, endless, the sun growing high again and yellow, until the sky began to drone, and a seaplane floated out of a cloud. My head was blister hot. The sun was spinning gold. Voices swam over me from men in white uniforms. Someone in red had been swimming in the shallows of sharks. The day froze to dead calm. Luck was all I heard one say as your hand appeared at the seaplane door. The boat rocked like a cradle. My skin went cool with noon. On a green tide of sharks and luck, we rode all the way home. Thank you very much for that poem. Yes. Thank you, Catherine Sonia. Thank you. K. Ryan, lighthouse keeping. Seas pleat, winds keen, fogs deepen, ships lean, no doubt, and the lighthouse keeper keeps a light for those left out. It is intimate and remote, both for the keeper and those afloat. Well, I did talk at the outset about keeping the light and tending the light, your light, and maybe to add help and help others tend theirs. So the role of the keeper, that has been essential throughout time. You know, I know there's some automatic lighthouses out there quite a lot now, but for the longest time, we needed those lighthouse keepers, still do at places. And here's a piece about one by Mark Waldron, the lighthouse keeper. On occasion, when the mood takes him, as it so often does, he will put down his papers, get up from his kindly old chair, and leave for a while the sweeping beam to sow its charitable seed, that seed which, when falling on the ground of a helmsman's fertile consciousness, ought germinate in it a cautious vigilance. He descends then the long corkscrew of the stairs and opens at their base the metal door so that he may take a closer look at what might be beyond his tower's environs. There he always finds the churning world. She laps at him from every side with no respite and spatters him with spray. Thanks to a certain modulation, a tone which he adopted long ago when he still wore shorts and buckled shoes, there is no danger here from neither shark nor crocodile, not in this sea stuffed as it is like a dressing-up box with whimsy. Indeed, were there such creatures hidden neath the slibber, thin surface of the waves, they'd have no teeth, but only soft, gray gums and goofy grins, and they'd be giggling knowingly at the whole thing. And so it is, then, as he gazes out, he cannot help but wonder what it is he might be warning of with the light that turns atop his tower, because that tower is itself, in fact, the only hazard anywhere on which a ship might rip her wooden skin and hemorrhage her lumpy blood that's made of all the gasping sailormen. Thank you, Mark Waldron. Interesting one. Yes, a whole other perspective on the light as a hazard. Well, yeah, but it does keep the sailors from the hazard. But you're right. It could be one, at least on the rocks it sits on. Well, what about things we take in that fuel our light, our lighthouses? Here's a poem of mine on a sort of more lighthearted note about feeding that part of our being. This is from Amsterdam in the Netherlands, November 2001. Zonnebrot, sunflower bread. If we eat this bread, will our bodies shine? I think mine shined that day when I ate it. I have to try that again sometime. But that bread was awfully delicious, I remember. The sunny taste of it. Well, I was thinking of people as lighthouses, right? We've been talking about that a bit, and people that I know that have been those for me, and I have a few that I'd like to just share with you about in poem form. This is from my splendid soul brother, Greg Truman, out in Marin, California, who is also my co-inspirator in and of the Poetosphere, that oasis of aliveness and illumination. I'm guiding that you can visit or join. All are welcome. The true man, the bright, smiling man I love, the bright-minded, right-hearted man I'm fortune-favored to know, the incandescently soulful seeker, journeyer, light-bearer, whose truth and trueness ever shows, ever shines. Love out to Greg. From March 2022 for my soul sister from India, beautiful soul sister Rose Felix. This was on her 43rd birthday at that moment. Tilanunna, radiant. Your rays, so bright and warm, emanating so clearly, purely, from your innermost self, through your face and eyes, your smile, lustrous skin, incandescing out to your outermost aura, shining and showing us your loving spirit, your divining soul, the great sunlight of your being. Love out to Rose. What just so happens, I guess, this last one, these are all soul friends. This is out in San Francisco is my soul sister Rachel, ever adventuring. This is back in her days in Africa, in Durban. And so I wrote this in April of 2001. Baobab, which of course refers to the great African tree. Blonde head under baobab, sun under shade. You sit on an African day, your body charged with light, your heart full of flowers and bright feathered birds, your dreams remarkably shaped, branched in red earth, rooted in blue air, you and your ancient baobab. Love out to Rachel. Lawson Fuseo Inada, my father and myself facing the sun. We are both strong, dark, bright men, though perhaps you might not notice, finding two figures flat against the landscape like the shadowed backs of mountains, which would not be far from wrong, for though we both have on Western clothes and he is seated on a yellow spool of emptied and forgotten telephone cable, and I recline on a green aluminum lounge, we are both facing into the August sun, as August as Hiroshima and the autumn. There are differences, however, if you care to discover, coming close respectfully. You must discover the landscape as you go. Come, it is in the eyes, the face, the way we would greet you stumbling as you arrive. He is much the smooth grass-brown slopes reaching knee-high around you as you walk. I am the cracks of cliffs and gullies, pieces of secret deep in the back of the eye. But he is still my father, and I his son. After a while there is time to go fishing, both of us squatting on rocks in the dusk, leaving peaks and tree line responsible for light. There is a lake below, which both of us acknowledge by facing forward, like the sun. Ripples of fish, moon, luminous insects, frogs, owls, crickets at their sound. Deer, raccoon, badger come down to drink. At the water's edge, the children are fishing, casting shadows from the enormous shoreline. Everything functions in the function of summer. And gradually, and not by chance, the action stops. The children hush back among rocks and also watch, with nothing to capture but dusk. There are 4 of us, together among others, and I am not at all certain what all this means, if it means anything, but feel with all my being that I must write this down, if I write anything. My father, his son, his grandsons, strong, serene, night, 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 before the following morning. Thank you, Lawson. Fuseo Inada, my father and myself facing the sun, from the collection Legends from Camp. Well, I had a wonderful response to this poem, sort of a call-in response, so I'll come to that in a minute, but let me share this. Like the morning sun. How can you be like the morning sun that pours pure light onto everything, into everyone? And here's the poem that, in response to that, I love answering a poem with a poem. I think that's wonderful. This is a response by R.M. Water speaks to morning sun. So you ask, how can I be like the morning sun? Become it. Join water to your blaze. I am clear-eyed and simple, filtering through stone, stars, and time, forever moving, cleansing, and satisfying. Moist, unselfish infinity, willing to run brittle bone dry, magnifying pure solar flares beyond first light, crafting a pure liquid lens, soaking this new world with precious, heartfelt hope. Thank you for this poem and this lens and that soaking. Thank you. Here's a book that I wanted to talk to you about a moment. It's by a physicist with a poetic spirit, Arthur Zajonc. Zajonc. On catching the light, the entwined history of light and mind. Yeah, interesting book. I'm just going to be a few moments from him. He said he was devoted to, quote, bringing all of who we are to all that the world is. How about that? Isn't that a beautiful thought? He writes this: the lights of nature and of mind entwine within the eye and call forth vision, yet separately each light is mysterious and dark. 2 lights brighten our world. One is provided by the sun, but another answers to it, the light of the eye. Only through their entwining do we see. Lacking either, we are blind. And by the way, the book is called The Entwined History of Light. Yeah, just so you know that. He also said, besides an outer light in eye, sight requires a, quote, inner light, one whose luminance complements the familiar outer light and transforms raw sensation into meaningful perception. The light of the mind must flow into and marry with the light of nature to bring forth a world. The light of imagination will occupy half of our history because of its significance for both the ancient world and poetry and the present world and science. No matter how brilliant the day, if we lack the formative artistic power of imagination, we become blind, both figuratively and literally. We need a light within as well as daylight without for vision, poetic or scientific, sublime or common. The mind is subtly and usually unconsciously active in sight, constantly forming and reforming the world we see. Thus, we participate in sight. In antiquity, our role in seeing and granting meaning to the sense world was felt more keenly than today. The inner light was closer to consciousness. Unlike the ancient Greeks, we live habitually in a scientific worldview that too often treats our participatory role in cognition as unessential or illusory. Yet to see, to hear, to be human requires, even today, our involvement, our ceaseless participation. Yes, indeed. That. Thank you, Arthur Zajonc. Yeah, I love that. Had to share that. Okay, this is, we talked a little bit about Greece, but this is from Greece, from the Aegean, from the island of Kea in the Cyclades, August 2012, one of those summers that I was there. And here meditating on the ways we can bring illumination to ourselves and others. O pyrsos mu, my torch. My torch, o pyrsos mu, is the pen that illuminates the page, the hand that guides each arriving word, the opened eyes that show me the world as it was, as it is, and now becomes. The eyes that light the life passages I wander and wonder through, that reveal the beauty and majesty of free, old, and fellow souls. It's the flame of my heart that dispels the darkness that burns with innocence. Pyrsos mu. Well, I feel we must speak of heart light, the light of the heart, of our hearts, its great incandescence, effulgence of many kinds. And here the gleaming light of lovers, among others, by Rainer Maria Rilke from Paris from 1909, from his uncollected poems. Forget, forget, and let us live now only this. How the stars pierce through cleared nocturnal sky, how the moon's whole disk surmounts the gardens. We've sensed so long already how the darkness breeds many mirrors, how a gleam takes shape, a white shadow in the radiance of night. But now let us cross over and invest this world where everything is lunar. Thank you, Rilke. From DeGraw Street, Cobble Hill, Brooklyn, April 2017. Sun bathing. Not the kind you do on a spread of gold sand and blue ocean. No, the sun of a lover's beholding eyes you bathe in, of a mother's cherishing eyes you bask in, of your own eyes warming you as you gaze in the mirror of your greatly radiant heart. I'm going to save this next one for another time because I want to keep us in a close time to where we usually like to land. This is but you could find it at poetryfoundation.org. It's a poem by Richard Jones called Lanterns. Lovely poem. I'm going to save that. Well, we might contemplate the life choices we are making now or soon, and if they will take us in a light-filled direction. For me, it's the only way to go. This is May 2016, Convent Station, New Jersey. Take the light path. The light of footpath. The light of heart and mind path. A bright, inviting, life-dappled, love-leafed path. A soul, whole soul path. Sunlighted by day, moon lantern by night. Open to you, ready for you, calling you there. Yes. I also mentioned another time, and I again have to save this for another time, but it's Joy Harjo's beautiful poem, A Map to the Next World, because I was thinking about the guiding light of lighthouses, and I thought about maps to finding our way, and hers is marvelous, especially the ending of it might be a surprise to you, but do read that if you have time and interest. A Map to the New World, Joy Harjo, Harjo. From the Ansonia Hotel, New York City, September 2016. Life in the solar system, but it's spelled S-O-U-L-E-R. It's not bound by gravity, only the laws of metaphysics. And instead of having one sun, it has over 7 billion and counting. Individual souls, no two alike, except in their radiance, whether they're greatly emanating or gradually potentializing on this blue planet, this Terra, this Gaia, they all revolve and evolve around. We're coming now into our last sharings and musings for this week, for this time together. This is a meditation on the autumnal equinox. Feel all the light falling. And I'll have a sip of water before we get to that. Let all the light fall today in a rare receiving way, fully, equally, wholly into your hemispheres, your north and south, your left and right brain, your masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious, actual and potential self. Pause. Close your sunlit eyes and slowly, slowly breathe. Open, widen. Feel the life-giving, life-renewing rays enter the center, the equator of your body, your being, bringing all parts of your inner world into great balance, bathing all parts of you in greater warmth and health, brightening, lightening your places, crevices, passages of darkness, sadness, hiddenness, shadow. Let all the new light falling, streaming, seeking, find and fill you this day with a keener seeing, sense of turning, promise of becoming. In the final of a book of James Baldwin's essays, he says this: one discovers the light in darkness. That is what darkness is for. But everything in our lives depends on how we bear the light. It is necessary while in darkness to know that there is a light somewhere, to know that in oneself, waiting to be found, there is a light. Aeschylus, the first of the classical Athenian, the fabled dramatists, the father of Greek tragedy, we could say, who raised the emerging art of tragedy to great heights of poetry and theatrical power, said, especially in times of darkness, that is the time to love, that an act of love might tip the balance. Oh, yes. And I came across in the book, And There Was Light by Jacques Lucérin. This is via the Marginalian, this bit. And then a bit from the book. In 1941, shortly after the Nazi invasion of France, he formed a resistance group and began publishing an underground newspaper that soon became the voice of the French freedom fighters. He was 17 years old. 2 months before his 19th birthday, Lucérin was betrayed by a member of the resistance, arrested by the Gestapo, and sent to the Buchenwald concentration camp. For 6 months he was kept in a space, quote, a space 4 feet long and 3 feet wide, with walls like a medieval fortress, door 3 fingers thick, with a peephole through which the jailers watched day and night, and a sealed window. But his bright spirit remained undimmed, devoted to stirring the spirit of resistance among the thousands of inmates. He came to see the place not as a prison, but as a, quote, a church underground. He would recount this: the mechanism of hope in our hearts must have 1,000 springs, almost all of them unknown to us. When a ray of sunshine comes, open out, absorb it to the depths of your being. Never think that an hour earlier you were cold and that an hour later you will be cold again. Just enjoy. Latch on to the passing minute. Shut off the workings of memory and hope. Take away from suffering its double drumbeat of resonance, memory, and fear. Suffering may persist, but already it is relieved by half. Throw yourself into each moment as if it were the only one that really existed. Thank you, Dr. Lucérin. And There Was Light. It's a remarkable read. I haven't read it all, but I will. All right. I'd love to give us David White's blessing for the light from his collection, The Bell and the Blackbird. I thank you, light, again, for helping me to find the outline of my daughter's face. I thank you, light, for the subtle way your merest touch gives shape to such things I could only learn to love through your delicate instruction. And I thank you, this morning, waking again, most intimately and secretly, for your visible invisibility, the way you make me look at the face of the world so that everything becomes an I to everything else, and so that, strangely, I also see myself being seen, so that I can be born again in that sight, so that I can have this one other way along with every other way, to know that I am here. Thank you, David White. Edward Hirsch, I was never able to pray. Wheel me down to the shore where the lighthouse was abandoned and the moon tolls in the rafters. Let me hear the wind paging through the trees and see the stars flaring out one by one like the forgotten faces of the dead. I was never able to pray, but let me inscribe my name in the book of waves and then stare into the dome of a sky that never ends and see my voice sail into the night. Beautiful. Thank you, Edward Hirsch. Thank you. From Kitchell Pond in the Lewantaka Brook Reservation, Compton Station, New Jersey, August 2016, the North Star. We all have one, and we all can be one. It doesn't shine far off. It's closer than you think. It shines clearly, prominently, not outside, but deep inside you, night and day. In the great constellation of your being, your Vos Major, a constant presence, Polaris, in your crown, fixed and bright enough to navigate by, circumnavigate with, to follow, if or when you're ready and willing, on a luminous, longed-for way of life, heart, self, terrestrial and celestial, your ever-faithful, providential North Star. Yes. Next to last, from Weekapaug, Rhode Island, June 2021. Remember that the source light that is ever present within and without. Remember to open to it, to keep opening to it. Outer and inner. Outer light, the light around us, that surrounds and affects us subtly to profoundly, bathes and suffuses us quietly, beautifully. Inner light, the light that lanternly shines from our beings, from our eyes, sometimes sun-like, sometimes moon-like. This light we share with the light of the stars we're made of, come from, wonder on. Outer and inner, the changing light, lightness we can emit and witness, of the dawn to dusk skies, the still and moving clouds, the waters of the open seas, nature's seasons, of our touching and being touched, our speaking, places of feeling, ways of moving through the days, through the world, of our loving, of our dreaming. And last for now, till we're together again here over these airwaves and light waves. This is an excerpt from Virginia Woolf's wonderful novel, To the Lighthouse. And that's the end, she said. And she saw in his eyes, as the interest of the story died away in them, something else take its place, something wondering, pale like the reflection of a light, which at once made him gaze and marvel. Turning, she looked across the bay, and there, sure enough, coming regularly across the waves, first 2 quick strokes and then 1 long, steady stroke, was the light of the lighthouse. It had been lit. Thank you again, friends, for leaning in, thinking and feeling in, for bringing the light of your minds and hearts and spirits into this good time together. I'd love you to share this or other floating poetry show links with friends. I'd also enjoy hearing any comments you'd like to share back to me from listening to these shows, including this one and your experience of Be a Lighthouse. I'd likewise be glad and grateful to accept any contribution you might like to make to me as thanks for this broadcast or any or all of them. These shows I create to engage and enlighten and encourage you. You can do so by Venmo to Fivefold, Fivefold, at pipeline.com, or by PayPal to the same email, or you can simply mail a check to me to P.O. Box 1032, Westerly, Rhode Island, 02891, or contribute through my site, thepoetorialist.com, at the Donate tab there. Is there a theme you'd like to have me create a broadcast on? If there is, email me, Colin at thepoetosphere.com. And for new listeners, you might want to know that patrons can privately host or sponsor me as a working poet in residence in the U.S. or beyond to create a new flight of poetic art and dedicate it to them, or you, if that's you. Email me to explore that. Meanwhile, you can hear all the broadcasts online, on YouTube, on the Floating Poetry playlist, and soon also elsewhere. These broadcasts are now offerings through the Poetosphere, the oasis of possibility that I'm guiding, which you can explore as a visitor or as a subscriber. And speaking of lighthouses, in ways it too is one, the Poetosphere, full of beautiful presence and purpose, illumination, beaconing the wonders of our inner and outer worlds, from the body to nature to humanity. I invite you to explore the abundant public content there, including the community of kindred spirits you can find and meet in the Poetosphere, thepoetosphere.com. I am also making month and year-long subscriptions possible for you and fellow listeners at a much-reduced membership using the code GLADTIDINGS, all one word, GLADTIDINGS, whether for yourself or to give as a very special gift to someone else. And you can, by the way, hear me recently interviewed in a Voce, V-O-C-E, dialogue on all major podcast platforms from Apple to Spotify, in conversation with the wonderful Naked Voice founder Chloe Goodchild in the UK about compassion, the poetics of life, self, possibility, and more. Just search for Voce Dialogues in Season 2, Episode 2, and you'll find it. Meanwhile, I hope you'll lean in here soon again. Until then, dear listeners, be a lighthouse, be radiant, and bring that light, that radiance of your being, of your source, to your days, to your family and friends, co-workers, your neighborhood, community, to the world around you, and give thanks often for the beacons of all kinds you have and find that brightly and faithfully fill you, guide you, and help keep you safe. Goodbye for now, and good spirits.